In August of 2023, Jen Cohen made history as USC's first female athletic director. Fittingly, the 6-month mark at the helm for Jen falls on Women's History Month. I sat down with the athletic director to discuss her time so far as a Trojan and highlight her accomplishments as a high-powered woman in sports. So since it's been 6 months for you here at USC, how's it been overall?
It's been incredible. First of all, it feels like I've been here for about 5 years because the fit's so outstanding. I love it. I love the culture of the school. Everything I always thought about USC, right? The history, the tradition, the commitment to athletics, the commitment to the student body overall, the Trojan family. Remember when I started and I said Trojan Nation? I got the Trojan family down now, and I just feel such a part of it. So it's been an exciting and incredible first 6 months.
Do you feel welcome now?
I do. I felt welcome from the first day I got here. I mean, there's a warmth and an energy to this campus and this community that is uniquely USC. I definitely feel more settled now. I bought a house in Manhattan Beach. I'm a South Bay and a girl now, and I feel like an Angelino. So awesome. I'm all in.
Well, like I mentioned, it's Women's History Month, and you're USC's first female AD. I want to look at your career as a whole. I was doing some research, and it's just so incredible to see how many women have influenced your career. But the first thing I want to start with is kind of where you got your start in sports, if you will. The infamous story of you in 5th grade writing a letter to UW coach Don James. Just take me through that drive that you had from such a young age.
Yeah, so when we moved from Southern California to Tacoma, my dad started buying UW football season tickets. And it was a time that Husky football had started to be pretty good. And it was love it, like you, love at first sight, and being in a college football environment. I fell in love with the competition and the community and how sports brings everybody together, and also just the relationships that you can build. And so I just had this passion for college football, and in particular UW football. So I developed a pen pal relationship with Don James, the head coach at the time, and also a couple other staff members. And I used to just send them tips, a little recruiting analysis, maybe, game breakdown, probably like you were doing when you were a little girl too, loving football. And one day I wrote him a letter and just said I wanted to replace him. I didn't say I want to replace him now. I said, when you retire, I want to replace you. And I was in 5th grade. And he wrote me back, and he was always so responsive. And he wrote me back and said, that's a really nice dream, but girls really aren't coaching football. But he put a but in there, and the but was that young women are getting involved more in college sports. And so when I tell this story now to young women, what I love is they gasp. Like, they're like, no, he didn't say that you couldn't coach football. But if you think about that was a long time ago. Yeah. And I didn't think of the letter as a negative. I didn't think of the letter as discouragement. I saw the door opening when he said, there are opportunities for young women in sports. And so I set my sights without having any clue what being an athletic director was at a very young age on being an athletic director. And so he inspired me then, and he still inspires me now. It's kind of crazy because when I became AD at Washington, his wife came to my press conference, which was amazing. And then I had the opportunity to actually erect a statue in his honor in front of that stadium as the director of athletics. And I give so much credit to Don James for one, writing me back, and two, for giving me hope that I could do anything that I thought I could.
That's amazing. I mean, given your personality type, what would you have done if he wasn't as accepting to your bold offer?
I don't know. I was thinking about it now. I think a lot of my motivation and kind of stick-to-itiveness didn't come from like having it all or having it all figured out. I actually reflect on my childhood, and my parents never put any limitations on my sister and I. There wasn't anything that they said, oh, you can't do this. There was no role identification that put us in any sort of boxes, and I think that really helped. But the other thing was, I just wasn't really elite at anything when I was growing up. I was kind of good at certain things, and I was always runner-up at a lot of things. I failed a lot. I had a lot of adversity, and I really look back on my life, not just my childhood, but my entire career, as the adversity and the failures are actually the things that have helped develop me the most. Because when you can come out of those, you gain more perspective, you gain more courage, and you actually gain more confidence when you come out of those, take another risk again, then have some success. Then you're like, okay, this is how it works. I got to keep leaning into that. And so I really like the fact that it wasn't easy for me. My past's never been easy. It's not easy now. And I love that. I say, bring it on. That's what helps me get better.
it's one thing to have a childhood dream, but to actually go into like adulthood and go
Yeah.
through the logistics of making that happen. How did you transition into, making it happen?
Yeah, it's funny. I look back on some of my years at Washington, and the majority of the time I was there before I became AD. I thought, who in their right mind would ever want to be an athletic director? So it wasn't like I wasn't like, oh, I am going to absolutely do this my entire points in my career. I had starts and stops in my career, including having a family where I wasn't sure if I was ever going to achieve this great dream. But when I started, I didn't have the path that most people would have to become a Division I, Power 5, now here at USC athletic director. I started off in Division III sports. So I did my undergraduate at San Diego State, and then in graduate school, I went to a small Division III school, Pacific Lutheran University in Tacoma, Washington, to get my graduate degree. Mm-hmm. And it was there that I coached volleyball. So I coached women's volleyball. I was an assistant coach. I was not the best coach, but I was a really good psychologist for the women, and I learned a lot about athletics at a very young age doing that. My first job out of grad school was another D3 school, University of Puget Sound, also in Tacoma, Washington, and that's where I met my first of many incredible female mentors, Robin Hamilton, and she just gave me the sense that, like, through hard work and grit and also having a little bit of fun, anything was possible. So that's kind of where it all began for me, was Division III athletics.
How did that relationship start with Robin?
I actually remember the first day I met her. We in the gym that they had at Puget Sound, is an old basketball gym, and we sat up in these bleacher seats, and she sat me down and just said, "This is how it works. Like, we grind here. Like, we work hard here. We wear a number of different hats here. We work on behalf of other people here." And we just were instant friends. She's godmother now to my youngest son.
Oh.
She was in my wedding. I mean, she's one of my best friends still. But it was her honesty, and I can hit on this when we talk about other women that have impacted my life. They were all truth tellers throughout my career. They didn't just believe in me and gave me opportunities. They also sat me down and said, "This is where your blind spots are. These are things like, hey, this behavior, maybe not very productive for you." And Robin was the first person to have those types of heart-to-heart talks with me, and also just emulate and show me what hard work and leadership look like. It was an awesome experience at Puget Sound.
No, that sounds awesome. And now, if I remember correctly, you went from Puget Sound, you applied for an internship that was specifically for women trying to get into athletic administration.
Yes, also game changing. So I was, in fact, the oldest intern in the history of college athletics at the time. So when I was at Puget Sound, and I knew this was my dream to be in Division I would try to do informational interviews. And remember, like, we didn't have technology like we do now. I mean,
What year are we in?
Well,
right now?
we're in the late 90s
If
right
I may
now.
ask.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
okay.
hair was looking good.
Okay,
It
yes.
was
Lots
was
of
quite the
volume.
look. Lots of
Okay.
volume, some bangs, those types of things.
Okay.
And so I had been trying to get some bigger schools to pay attention to me, and I got into like an informational interview over in Montana at Montana State, 'cause my dad was living in Bozeman at the time, and that AD kind of was like, "Yeah, good luck. That's not going to happen for you." So I realized, like, this is going to be almost impossible to go from a Division III school. I just didn't understand it. I was young. I didn't get it from a Division III school to a Division I job. So I saw it was like back in the day where we had the printed NCAA news. It wasn't even like big internet years.
Okay.
And I saw that there was this endowed internship at Texas Tech called the Janine McCaney Endowed Internship. And it was established by the late Janine McCaney, who was a pioneer and trailblazer for women in college sports, who had passed away. And in her will, she established this endowment. For a female aspiring to be a college athletic director to come to Texas Tech and do a rotating internship. It paid $1,000 a month, and I applied, and a woman named Judy Henry, who was the SWA at the time at Texas Tech, interviewed me over the phone and eventually gave me the job. And I moved to Texas sight unseen to Lubbock, Texas for this incredible year of my life. One of the best transformational years of my life for the access and experiences that I was provided by Judy and others at Tech.
What was that conversation like with Dr. Judy?
Well, I mean, this woman, she was the dean of students prior to coming over as an SWA, and she was the most calm, patient, kind-hearted, humbled servant leader that I had ever really experienced. There was just a wisdom and honesty to her that was really unique. And she saw something in me. In fact, it's so embarrassing. She kept the letter that I wrote her, which is now, 25 years old. The letter I used to apply for that position. She actually just sent it to me the other day. And I said, how in the world did you ever hire me? My grammar wasn't great. I used way too many I's. But my letter was about, I'm a risk taker and I don't want to settle. And there was something in the letter and the conversations that she saw in me. And she took me under her wing. And what I learned from Judy is, and I felt so privileged in that internship because they didn't treat me like quote unquote intern, and it has helped me think differently about how we develop people too. But what I learned from her is everybody deserves a seat at the table. And she gave me a seat at the table in so many different meetings and conversations, and I got to go on trips and travel the postseason and help with Big 12 activities and things like that. She just taught me that if you do that for other people, maybe they don't always see that in themselves, and sometimes we have to show people that they can do it. Sometimes we have to be the believer in them before they're the believer in themselves. And so that was a game-changing year for me, and I'm still close with Judy, and we check in with each other, and I'm grateful to her, and obviously most grateful to Janine, who I never will ever get a chance to thank. I was the first recipient of that endowment, and I was the first to become an athletic director.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned before, and you kind of did this previous answer, that mentors see something in you that you don't necessarily see in yourself. The past two mentors that you mentioned, you kind of mentioned that you were kind of rough and new to the environment, the professional environment. What do you think they saw in you to kind of elevate you further?
I think energy, passion, fire, work ethic, a care for others. The work in college athletics, I think, is very misunderstood. I think most people that love college athletics as fans get to experience the excitement of game day, right? They get to see our student athletes compete. They get to gather and have an amazing experience as fans and as a community, and that is such an important part of what we do. But to deliver on that piece of what we do takes us working with a bunch of different stakeholders, a very complex group of stakeholders actually in college sports that all matter. And we need to get them aligned, and they're rarely aligned. And so I think the older, wiser professionals in our business that had been there and done it before, that cultivated and developed me, they knew that already. I didn't know that. But what they saw in me was somebody that was going to be collaborative, that was somebody that was going to be an alignment builder, that was somebody that was going to put others and the greater good first to help build something even bigger and more impactful. I think that's just how I've been, and what motivates me is to make things better and to help people get better. And I think they saw that in my heart and helped cultivate that for me.
Now, when you go from Texas Tech, you're able to kind of have a homecoming of sorts. You
Yes.
go back to UW. How are you able to navigate back home?
That was a dream come true. I also remember my first day at UW. Back in that time, you could drive into the stadium and park. Wow. We renovated Husky Stadium when I was there, so it's different. But I remember the drive-in. I remember the call to my dad. I remember saying I finally, did it, and that's all thanks to another female mentor, somebody that has a lot of ties here at USC, and Barbara Hedges. I had a chance to interview with her for an entry-level development position, and it's kind of ironic because I didn't have any fundraising experience at any of the time I was at Tech or any of the experiences that I had in Division III, but it was an entry-level fundraising position, and I remember sitting in her office. She's a very intimidating person. She's very put together. She's very direct. It still is, to this day. And I sat at the table that then ended up being my table when I was the director of athletics. And she was thumbing through my resume, and she kept saying, I don't see your development experience. Where's your development experience? And eventually I convinced her that, yes, I don't have it, but I have experience in managing in a lot of different diverse experiences with different school sizes and different populations, and that I can learn it. And so she gave me a chance. And I learned so much from Barbara. I think the thing I learned the most was attention to detail, that every little thing matters. And also that if you want to engage people, she was a great fundraiser. And so she cultivated me as a fundraiser during that entire time. she got people to buy in and give because she let other people drive ideas, and she listened to people's voices, and she really valued volunteerism and how people were giving back. And I remember, talking about truth tellers, I remember once we were sitting, we had a women's basketball advisory committee because we were really trying to grow interest in women's basketball at UW at the time. And I was a facilitator with that group. And I remember I talked too much and I gave too many opinions, and I tried to take control of the room and not listen to the volunteers and listen to the donors. And she pulled me aside right away and was like, that's not how you do it. And so, like, God, I mean, how cool is that? Because my entire career, development and fundraising has been a hallmark for me, and so many of the great things that we've ever been able to accomplish in fundraising anywhere I've ever been have been not because of me, but because of those donors and because of those volunteers and supporters. And I would have never known how to do that if she wouldn't have said, you're not doing it right. like this is how it goes. So Barbara gave me a shot there, and she taught me a lot of valuable lessons over the years.
It's funny you mentioned the lack of fundraising experience, but all your answers talk about the relationships that you're able to build, strong relationships. Did you know that you wanted to go into fundraising, or was that just your foot in the door?
No idea. And it was a match made in heaven for sure. I still fundraise in this current role. I absolutely love it. The reason why I love it so much is that fundraising is about other people helping you solve big problems, create big, impactful opportunities, and create positive change. And so that's that partnership work that I really love. I mean, you get to see, you get to be around a lot of very smart people that oftentimes know more or have more expertise than maybe you do on your own. And you get to think about how you can do something really unique, and you can't do it by yourself. I mean, really, honestly, if you think about what we do and anything in life, there's very few things in our lives if we could point and look and say, that was an incredible moment. Are we standing there by ourselves?
Yeah, no.
We're not. Yeah. We're standing there with a bunch of other people. Sometimes we're on other people's shoulders. Sometimes we're lifting other people up, but we're together with other people. I think that's why I still love college athletics in every shape or form, no matter how much it's changed and no matter how much it's going to continue to change. There's no doubt in my mind, one, we're still going to be developing people, and two, we get to do it together.
You said that Barbara taught you that details matter. Where do you see that in your day-to-day life now as athletic director here?
Oh, I think that organization and every little thing continues to matter. I just think that that is the essence of true leadership, is to pay attention to all the little things because they add up to be big things. Part of that she taught me was the details were about how you engage and treat people. How you engage and treat people, the words you use, the way you follow up. If you say you're going to do something, do it. Treating everybody with respect. So I've never thought about positionality. And in fact, there's probably been no day that I've walked around here or any time I've been a director of athletics where I actually thought, I'm the director of athletics. I don't think about it that way. I think about that we're all doing something together. And so those interactions, how you treat people, how organized you are, those things are really important at any level of any organization in any position that you're in.
What was it like moving up the ranks at UW? Was that a credit to your success, obviously, or just the organizational structure at UW?
Both. I mean, how blessed was I to be able to stay at a school that I absolutely loved in all my heart and always will, at a time where I was also raising a family and had an incredible amount of support and community in that area to be able to do what I was doing. A lot of my success and growth came from other people giving me opportunities in doing that. Of course, I've had to fight for it and work hard and do the right thing and show up for others, but you don't get to have the opportunities I've had without having a lot of other people in your corner. And so I've had both incredible men and women that stood by me throughout those years. And there were times where I didn't even know if I could keep doing it, because balancing my boys, who are my life and my heart and my everything today and always, with this type of career is very difficult to do. It's very difficult to do. And their father was supportive, and I had bosses that were supportive, and I had friends and family that helped me along the way. And so it was just an incredible journey of ups and downs and twists and turns.
Yeah, you mentioned just such a common dilemma that career women, if you will, face, family or career, and you were able to navigate both. What was that like, kind of making that decision for yourself?
Well, one, it was hard. It's still hard,
Yeah.
even now. Coming here, even though I came here 2 weeks after becoming an empty nester, you have no idea what it feels like until you go through it, which is new for me, to have that chapter of your life close. And you're still a parent, but your role's very different. But it was a grind. And I always tell men and women that, if you think that you're supposed to be perfect in this thing, this whole parenting thing, like, that's not going to probably fly whether you're working in athletics or doing anything.
Sure, yeah.
I'm really grateful. One thing that college athletics really taught me was to how to practice being a more values-driven parent, a more values-driven person versus an outcome-driven person. And it's kind of ironic if you think about it, because we're evaluated by our outcomes, right, in sports, and there's nobody that wants to win more than me. But after doing this for 30, I don't even want to say how many years because I'm going to date myself, but over 30 years now, what I've learned is that the results and the outcomes only come from the values in the process, especially if you want to sustain something, and especially if you want it to matter and be meaningful and be lasting and do it the right way. And so I got a lot out of my job as it translated into being a mother.
Fascinating.
Yeah, and my kids both were athletes, and so I think that's really helped too. In fact, when I moved Dylan to Montana, it was the same week we were trying to get UW into the Big Ten. It was a perfect, I wish we would have video of it. It was a perfect modern mother moment, because I'm making his bed in the dorm and I have my AirPods in the entire time. We're at dinners as we're launching our son, and I'm outside on my phone almost the entire time. And he's waving at me, and like, my kids really didn't know, anything different. But when I took him over there, I said, I'm gonna let you drive communication. You can call me 24/7 anytime, but I'm gonna let you drive communication. And my communication isn't gonna be about how was practice, are your grades good, did you get any reps today? Because I just watched all these kids who have so much pressure on performing at all times, and I wanted my sons to know that who they are as people and how they behave, and our love for each other is going to matter more than whether they ever make the PGA or start at any game at the University of Montana. And I don't think I would have parented that way if I wouldn't have been here. So it's given me a lot of gifts, but it has not been perfect.
When you talk about values first,
Yeah.
is that something that you were able to just kind of learn through wisdom, or do you learn the hard way to make that a priority?
I think everything in my life I've had to learn through a lot of sets of experiences, and mostly really the hard things that help me kind of come out of it and get more clarity. I think in leadership, one of the greatest gifts you can have is perspective. And if everything goes according to plan all the time, and or if everything's handed to you, or if everything goes on the script and the path that you've predetermined in your mind is supposed to be that way, then how in the hell are you supposed to learn?
Yeah.
And so I really think that most of my growth has been off of having the confidence to jump back into something after the failures, that I've had. I was telling some young people the other day that the biggest change for me in mindset happened when I became the athletic director. I spent a lot of time fighting with a chip on my shoulder to prove other people wrong. I had, in my opinion, I created in my mind almost like a deficiency. So to be good enough, I had to outwork you and out-hustle you and outperform you, and I was going to finally get you to believe that I was good. And I think whether you're male or female, I think a lot of people struggle with that type of mindset. And that chip gave me an edge, and that edge got me pretty far. But what I learned in being in leadership at a very visible, high pressure level was that that's not a very good mindset to perform at optimal level, and it's certainly not the right mindset to inspire other people. And so I started to really practice things within my own self about learning from the inside out, to really be thinking about those values and what really matters to me, and like living a life that mattered to me, not what I thought other people wanted. And the more visible I became, the better I got at not paying attention to the noise. So some people, I think, let that drive them, and that can be exhilarating, because when it's good, it's good. But when it's bad, it's really bad. And I credit Chris Peterson, former football coach at Boise and at Washington, who really taught me a lot about how to win from the inside out, and still is a great mentor in that space now for me.
Yeah, I think you mentioned before that some of your best decisions came from deciding inside out versus outside in.
Yeah, I wish I could repeat some of those because they're a little confidential. But I can tell you, every single time I knew in my gut something didn't match up with my heart, and I made that decision anyways, those were the worst decisions I ever made. Oh. And so I think about like when I hired Coach DeBoer, that was a real low point for me, just personally and professionally. I'd gone through a lot of really hard changes in my life, all during, we had the pandemic, I had gone through a divorce, I was trying to launch kids, I had one going to college and then he was coming back, I still had a high school son, I had lost Coach Pete in that kind of relationship within the department, I'd made a coaching hire that was not going according to plan, and then by the time I made a change there and I was hiring Kaylin, it definitely felt like this was like such a big moment, you know, in my career. And it was so fun to like feel confident in that moment as opposed to not. Mm-hmm. And it was just kind of based on the body of the work and the experience. I was like, oh, actually I have more strength in this thing this time around, as opposed to thinking about it as a deficiency anymore.
And I want to pull us back a little bit in the timeline. When you were named the interim athletic director, what was the thought process there? Because now here you are, you're at
you feel like you're, back and just talk about another, I just like to talk a little bit about another person that really changed my life and my trajectory, that also believed in me, that was also a woman, and that's Anamari Kause, the president at University of Washington. I mean, she had the courage to give me a chance when I hadn't done it before. And there's no doubt in these jobs, you have training wheels. I mean, you can have all the experience. I had a ton of institutional knowledge, but you don't know what you don't know until you get into a job like this and start to see it from a different lens. But she had confidence in me, that she knew that there were going to be bumps in the road, but she also had confidence that I was going to lead in a way that was going to make the university proud, and that I was bright enough to eventually, you know, kind of get us to where we needed to be along the way. And so she just taught me a lot about courage. You know, she taught me a lot about doing the right thing no matter what anybody else said, doing the right thing when you were literally the only person that thought it was the right thing. And I think that she spent an entire career trying to live that way. And so, yeah, she gave me a shot at the interim position, and she told me I was a candidate for the full-time position. And then it was a little weird, you know, when you go from being peers with all these people to being their boss, but it's interim, and then you're trying to get the job, and you don't want to do anything that's too crazy during the interim period. It was a really, and you're treated differently when you're in an interim, because you're auditioning and none of the other candidates are auditioning.
Yeah.
So it was a great learning experience.
How did you see your leadership kind of evolve through that interim to
full-time?
I
feel like my leadership has evolved a lot during those over 7 years that I was AD too. I think during that interim time, I knew enough about the place where I had a great SWOT analysis, and so we were able to keep things going and also create some, you know, minimal changes during that interim time. And then we had a lot of success early on when I was named athletic director. We just had a lot of teams winning at a really high level. We built a really cohesive leadership team. And then over those years, we also had a lot of things change and happen. And those years are really where I feel like I really formed a much stronger understanding of leadership, a much more confident approach to how to lead. And I felt like all that experience like built me for USC. I feel like everything I ever did there built me for the opportunity that I have here.
You mentioned previously that when you were named AD, almost overnight you became a figure for women in sports.
Yeah, it's really weird.
How did you navigate that?
Well, it's so interesting because I think this is such a tough conversation, because when I was young, I didn't really identify my gender as something that was negative, or like something that held me back. I think because I actually thought I had other deficiencies or something, I just didn't think about it that way. And I don't say that to discourage or to say that's not true. I will tell you that my gender is definitely acknowledged, or an issue for a lot of people still, even now in 2024.
Yeah.
I know that because I see it, I hear it. Sometimes it's direct, sometimes it's indirect, and so I know it's still there. So I didn't think about it. But then when I became AD at Washington, and there were so many young women that felt so drawn to that and so inspired by that and motivated by that, it helped me, one, recognize the importance of the position of it and the responsibility of it. And it also was like, wow, I really need to do well at this, because people still only see me in this job by my gender. I think we're humans and we're leaders, and we do good things, and we make mistakes, and it doesn't necessarily have to do with that. But I think you get labeled that way more.
It's a very nuanced situation because you want to highlight the barriers that you're breaking, but you don't want to make it. You're a hard worker. That's who you are. Like, how do you?
And I don't think about myself as a female leader. I think about myself as a leader. I definitely have qualities about me or experiences about me that are tied to my gender that absolutely show up in how I lead and how I live my life. But I don't spend a significant amount of time categorizing them that way, just primarily because I feel like I was put on this earth to bring inspiration and courage for others to be their best selves. And I mean that for everybody.
Yeah.
All people.
Yeah.
I also happen to be a mother of sons, and so I think my role in teaching them that women can lead is really great. But I also want to encourage my sons to be the best human beings they can be too, and not have it all be about gender.
You mentioned previously that you kind of evolved out of having a chip on your shoulder and kind of like, I'll prove you mentality.
Yeah.
But if in 2024 people are still making your gender known to you, how
Yeah.
do you? I feel like I would put the chip on my shoulder.
Yeah,
in that
I
sense.
mean, it is a challenge, but that's your ego. And so I think part of trying to become your best self, your wholest self, your self that can give you really everything that you need and want in your own life to then give it back to everybody else, has to do with minimizing your ego on a daily basis. I mean, we all have one.
Yeah.
We all have one, but when we let it drive, that's the winning from the outside in, and I'm practicing winning from the inside out, which means that the validation isn't going to come from the outside. So the validation doesn't come from if somebody treats you differently or not. The validation comes from that with every step in every way and every interaction that you have, you work your tail off to do the right thing, do right by the people that you're serving and how you treat people, and you build relationships with people. Some will come, some will go. Not everybody will stay with you based on whatever's going on in the outside, but the ones that matter the most always will, because you did it the right way.
When it comes to, you were at UW for so long and the USC job came open to be athletic director.
Yeah.
How did you navigate having to, cut ties with something you've been with for so long?
Yeah, I mean, I thought about USC before. I mean, I love Southern California. Obviously, I have ties with Southern California. I have admiration for USC before I got here. But I always had an opportunity at UW to keep growing. And so my priorities in life are about continuous growth with people that I love and making a difference. And I never had to leave UW to do that. And so I think a lot of people, that's kind of the outside in thing, like, oh, I got to go take the next thing and show I can do it. And that just never motivated me. When USC opened this time around, I had just become an empty nester. I had just gotten Washington into the Big Ten. I felt very confident in the coaching hire that we had made, and felt incredible about the staff and the culture that was in Seattle and in UW at the time. And I thought, this place has been my baby. It grew me and I raised it too. And if I'm ever going to go try something new for myself, which I felt an itch that I needed to try a new challenge, is there ever going to be a time better than now? I get to leave something I've loved in good hands. I get to go to a school that I've always admired. I knew that the challenges here and the opportunities here were going to be really exciting and probably fit the experiences and the battle-tested environment that I'd already been in, and it has absolutely been the case. So did I agonize? Absolutely. Anything worth doing is going to hurt. It's going to have pain. It's going to have fear. You're going to have a set of emotions to it. But since the day I got here, I've never looked back.
Dr. Foltz said in the introductory press conference that you guys really hit it off in the interview process. What was that like, becoming closer with her in that process?
Well, also, here's another woman that gave me an opportunity, right? Dr. Foltz and also Suzanne Nora Johnson, who is phenomenal. Dr. Foltz's commitment to athletics and her commitment to students, making USC athletics a moonshot and prioritizing us was a huge draw for me in taking this job. She's taught me a lot about boldness, big dreams, big goals, going for it, not paying as much attention to the obstacles, really focusing on where we want to go. And so her passion and her energy and all that she's already been able to do here, but really how she's positioned athletics, second to none.
On the whole, have you looked back and just seen the connections of just wonderful women who kind of steward you through your career? Like, is that something that you've noticed along, or did it take kind of us sitting down to do this?
Yeah,
to kind of...
this has really pieced it together for me. I mean, I've always recognized how blessed I was, and I've always cared about the relationships that I've had, and have known I've had a lot of women in my life that have stood up for me or helped carry me along the way. But when you really start to sit and have this conversation and you look at pretty much every step of the way, there was a strong woman who was ahead of her time and bold and visionary that gave me an opportunity. It makes me emotional because, like, lucky me, and that's obviously something I've really tried to do in my career, and it makes me motivated to make sure that I continue to do so moving forward.
Yeah, I've heard many stories about how you've mentored women along your journey as well. Yeah. What are you like as a mentor in that sense?
I just laugh because I remember at one point in time I had an executive team there was maybe like one guy or two guys that was just like, hey, don't forget us over here. And it seemed so unusual to other people. I never thought about it. It's so rewarding. It's rewarding because I had those people that had been there and done it. They saw things that I didn't see. And now I feel like that's who I am. I've been there, I've done it, I'm still doing it. But I have a lot more sets of experiences. I've got scars, I've fallen a lot. Like, I have a lot more confidence than I ever did when I was younger. And so I love the opportunity to help other people see that in themselves and give that back because so many people gave it to me.
What do you think younger Jen, the one so excited to be at a UW football game, would think of older Jen who's done so much right now?
Yeah, hopefully just that they can see it so they know that they can become it. I think, most young people now, I think young people give me so much hope because I think they're so much further evolved within themselves than maybe I was when I was a kid. But I still think that sometimes people don't know they can do it unless they see something that resonates, that something that makes sense to them, that connects with them in a way that they believe, oh, I can too. So I just hope that when young people see me doing it, they know that whatever they want to do, they can do.
Yeah, in that sense, my final question for you, for young women in general in the Trojan family, what's your message for them?
Yeah, well, first of all, we have incredible women in the Trojan family, right? I mean, our student athletes are an inspiration to me. I've learned a lot from student athletes over my entire career, in particular female student athletes, about courage and leadership. And I would just say that, one, you can do anything, but two, it's not supposed to be easy. It's not supposed to be perfect. And it's not supposed to be about anybody else but you. If you figure out what you are and who you are and what you want, you will then develop that in yourself to then give it back to other people. But just keep prioritizing your own development. You have control over what you can control. Focus on that. Keep doing what you want to do, how you want to do it, and you will eventually impact other people's lives.
Well, Jen, this is amazing. Thank you for being so introspective. It was amazing to hear all the life lessons you've learned throughout your amazing career so far.
Thank you. Appreciate you too.